Hello viewers, welcome to my YouTube channel Bangladesh to get the latest videos on ELT, TESOL, TEFL, Linguistics and Applied Linguistics programs. This is Loed, Chairman IELT and Head of Linguistics Bangladesh with ELT course paper 5, Approaches and Methods of Language Teaching Part 1, Communicative Language Teaching Unit B. As a part of MA in ELT program, this lecture is on Emergence and Historical Background of Communicative Language Teaching or CLT approach. In this video, you will learn about meaning, emerging, origin, region, and history of communicative language teaching. So, this video is very important and helpful for you. Learn English by English. Keep watching my English medium videos. I maintain international standard in teaching English. Let's get started. Introduction. Basically, CLT is a new stream in the realm and arena of teaching learning a second language or a foreign language. The word communication is descended from the Latin noun communicatio, which meant sharing or imparting. Its root senses have to do with sense, exchange, and goods possessed by more than one person. The Latin verb communicare means to make common. Therefore, the English term communication has been evolved from two Latin words, communis and communicare, which are closely related to the word communication in English. Communis is noun word which means common or communally or sharing. Similarly, communicare is a verb which means make something common, and out of these two Latin words, the English terminology communication has emerged. The rise of CLT in the 1970s and the early 1980s was partly in response to the lack of success with traditional language teaching methods and partly by the increase in demand for language learning. To speak specifically, communicative language teaching came up at the beginning of the 19th century and formalized in the late 1960s, reflecting the social changes. It is critically evaluated as a theory in foreign language teaching based on an overall view of its history, theory, and application. Now, let's discuss when, where, why, and how CLT emerged. During and after World War II, a large number of people emerged as refugees in England from nearby countries, especially from Germany and Japan, due to worst impact of war, to survive and settle themselves around the coast of Britain, as we find the Rohingyas in Bangladesh. But they didn't know how to communicate in English and faced great problems in communicating with British people. With a view to that, some British linguists and applied linguists like Dale Hymes, David Wilkins, John Manby, David Nunat, Noam Chomsky, Michael Halliday, along with Council of Europe, started thinking about an alternative method of teaching English as a second or foreign language rather than the traditional teaching methods that contribute greatly for the emergence of CLT. The term communicative competence was first used by the linguist and anthropologist Dale Hymes in 1966 in his lecture delivered in a conference on developing the language of the disadvantaged children. Dale Hymes developed the concept of communicative competence, which redefined what it meant to know a language. Wilkins was one of the first to use the term communicative approach in 1974. Noam Chomsky focused on competence and performance in language learning in the 1960s that gave rise to communicative language teaching as well. Review of CLT. CLT was said to have originated from Britain during the 1960s. It served as a replacement to the popular method known as situational language teaching, which is based on the structural review of language. Linguist Noam Chomsky criticized the structural linguistics because it was not enough to cover syntax, since there would be infinity of sentences from finite rules that can be said and spoken. What Chomsky proposed that a set of parameters must be created that would be able to generate all the possible sentences in a language. This criticism of Chomsky gave rise to a couple more proposals in language teaching, and the communicative approach is the one that has prevailed still today. Likewise, communicative language teaching also came as a response to the prominent method of learning a language, the audiolingual method, and as an application of the notion function and content-based syllabuses. Audiolingual demanded itself as people's need to learn foreign language skills during and after World War II. It is closely connected with behaviorism, thus making drilling, repetition, and habit formations are its central elements of instruction. Now, I'll be talking about CLT versus notion function. The notion function syllabus is a way by which a language learning curriculum can be organized. Here, the instructions are assigned unlike audiolingual, but in terms of notions and functions, where a notion is a specific environment where people communicate and a function is a unique objective for a speaker in a given environment. There are certain practices under the communicative approach. For one, the communicative approach has it that meaning is paramount. Language learning aims to achieve communication. Effective communication is short. Drilling may occur and pronunciation is focused on. Any tool which helps the students learn is connected. Communicating in the target language is encouraged from early years, whereas translating text may be used at a very lower level. Likewise, reading and writing may be started early as well. The linguistic feature of second language is learned through engaging in communication. Communicative competence is considered the main aims of learning a language. Creation of language and linguistic communication. Language is created by individual, often through trial and error. Fluency and acceptable language is the main goal. Accuracy is examined in context. Students are expected to interact with other people, such as group, pair, and group work, as well as peer groups. The teacher may not determine the language the students use. The communicative approach gives a great support for students to use the target language in various contexts and functions. Any tool which helps the students learn communicating is strongly recommended here. The primary focus of CLT is on creating meaning rather than developing perfectly grammatical structures or acquiring native sounding pronunciation. This means that the success of learning a foreign language can be evaluated in terms of how one has developed his or her communicative competence, which can be defined as the ability to apply formal knowledge as well as the sociolinguistic aspects of language on one's proficiency to communicate. Core issues of emerging communicative approach. Delheim's 1972 claimed that the competence performance description devised by Noam Chomsky didn't deal with the appropriateness of the socio-cultural significance of an utterance in the situational and verbal context where it is applied. According to Delheim, there are rules that should be understood along with knowledge of grammar rules. Himes refers that without these rules, the knowledge of grammatical rules would not be effective in the language spoken. Therefore, Himes suggests a conceptions of competence. Critical evaluation of emerging CLT approach. Communicative language teaching (CLT) is critically evaluated as a theory of foreign language teaching based on an overall review of its history, theory, and application, which came up at the beginning of the 19th century and formalized in the late 1960s, reflecting the social changes. As the quality education develops in the world, foreign language teaching confronts many challenges. The most popular foreign language teaching methods of 1960s like grammar translation method, audiolingual method, and direct method developed a command of grammar rather in language forms and rules, but could not develop the speaking abilities of the non-native speaking learners that were based on memorizing language forms. So there was a need of an approach which could help the students grasp how to use target language to communicate appropriately, fluently, and effectively by being more concerned with students' initiative and interaction rather than simply with teacher-centered direction. Conclusion. From the above discussion, it comes clear that emergence of communicative language teaching (CLT) was very important for modern communication. Katsuru 1989, Koike and Tanaka 1995 have defined the following four major goals of communicative approach to improve students' communicative competence, which is widely accepted as number 1, grammatical competence, number 2, sociolinguistics competence, number 3, discourse competence, and number 4, strategic competence. Thus, it can be claimed that communicative approach brought about the relevant change of teaching method under the name communicative language teaching, in which communicativeness became the outstanding feature of teaching English as a second language or as a foreign language among the non-natives, bilingual, plurilingual, or multilingual learners for communications. Thanks for watching this video.